The roar of passing cars and the sting of the afternoon sun against my skin reminded me of the stakes. I had exactly 25 minutes to get across town, where my one shot at a real job, a life-changing opportunity, was waiting. My heart pounded as I checked my reflection in a storefront window. My only suit, a thrift store find, was slightly oversized, but it was the best I had. My resume, carefully folded, felt like a ticket to escape the grinding poverty that had ruled my life for too long. Then I saw her. A woman stood by the side of the road, frantically waving her arms at passing cars. Her sleek black sedan had its hood popped open, white smoke curling into the sky. But no one stopped. Not a single person. Her face twisted in frustration. She was clearly out of her element, not the kind of woman who knew how to fix a car. I took one step forward, then stopped. If I helped her, I'd miss my interview. A wave of self-doubt hit me. This job could change my future. Why should I risk it for a stranger? But then I saw something else, her panic, her helplessness. I knew what it felt like to be ignored, to need help and watch people turn away. I made my choice. "Excuse me, ma'am," I called, already moving toward her. "Looks like you need some help." She turned, her green eyes sharp with suspicion, like she wasn't used to people offering kindness. "Do you know anything about cars?" she asked. "A little," I said, rolling up my sleeves. "Mind if I take a look?" She hesitated before stepping aside. I ignored the ticking clock in my head as I peered under the hood. The problem was clear, a burst radiator hose. Easily fixable, but not quickly. I could still leave. The interview was in 15 minutes. If I ran, I might barely make it. But something in her eyes, an edge of desperation, held me in place. I grabbed the tools from the back of her car and got to work, sweat trickling down my back. Minutes passed. Precious minutes. I knew what I was sacrificing, but I kept going. "You really don't have to do this," she murmured. "Yeah. Well, someone's gotta help," I replied. Her gaze softened, and for the first time, I noticed something about her. The way she carried herself, the unspoken weight behind her words. Who was she? But before I could ask, I heard my phone buzz in my pocket. A reminder. Interview in 5 minutes. My stomach clenched. I was too late. I missed it. Everything I had worked for.
Gone.
"Is everything okay?" she asked, her voice quieter. I forced a smile, even though my chest felt hollow.
"Yeah.
Just had somewhere to be, but it's fine." I finished the repair and wiped my hands on my pants. "You're good to go now." She studied me for a moment. Then, unexpectedly, she asked, "Where were you supposed to be?" I hesitated, but something about her made me tell the truth. Job interview. It was important, I admitted, but I made my choice.
She seemed to process that.
Then she did something strange. She extended her hand. "My name is Olivia Monroe," she said. The name hit me like a truck. Olivia Monroe, the CEO of Monroe Enterprises. Billionaire. One of the most powerful women in the city. My throat went dry. I just missed my one shot at a better future for her. And she knew it.
"Get in," she said.
I blinked. "What?" "You helped me when you had everything to lose," she said simply. "Now let me help you." I hesitated. Was this a joke? But something in her steady gaze made me believe her. So, against every instinct screaming at me to walk away, I opened the car door and slid into the leather interior of a billionaire's ride. The car smelled of expensive perfume and new leather as we pulled away from the roadside. Olivia kept her eyes on the road, but I could feel her watching me in the reflection of the mirror. "So, tell me about yourself," she said. I swallowed hard. "There's not much to say." "Try me." I took a deep breath. For the first time in my life, someone powerful wanted to listen. And so I told her about the struggles, the endless dead-end jobs, the dream of something more, and the weight of expectations that came with growing up poor. She listened, really listened. When I finished, she tapped her fingers against the steering wheel. "Do you still want that job?" she asked. I turned to her, confused. "What?" "You missed your interview because of me. That means I owe you." Her lips quirked into a smile. I have a position open at my company. Do you want it? My heart stopped.
A job.
At Monroe Enterprises. This was more than a job offer. It was a chance to change everything. I wanted to say yes, to accept without question. But I hesitated. I don't want charity, I said. Her eyes flashed with amusement. Then earn it. What do you mean?
She grinned.
Consider this your interview. If you impress me, the job is yours. My pulse thundered in my ears. This was it. A test. A final shot at redemption. And I wasn't going to waste it. I inhaled sharply, gripping the leather seat beneath me. A test. This wasn't just any job. It was an opportunity that people would kill for. And Olivia Monroe, the CEO herself, was handing me a chance to prove myself. You serious? I asked, studying her face, looking for any sign that this was some kind of sick joke. Dead serious. She kept her eyes on the road, her voice cool but firm. You say you're hardworking, determined? Show me. I clenched my fists. This wasn't a handout. It was a challenge. Fine, I said, straightening my posture. Tell me what I need to do. A ghost of a smile crossed her lips. Good, she said. Because you're about to be thrown into the deep end. We pulled into the towering Monroe Enterprises building, the kind of place I had only ever seen from the outside, where men in expensive suits and women in designer heels walked like they owned the world. And now I was walking in with Olivia Monroe herself. I felt the stares. The judgment. Who's that? I heard someone whisper. Why is he with Olivia? A security guard instinctively moved to stop me, until Olivia gave him a single, sharp glance. He backed off immediately. I swallowed the lump in my throat. I didn't belong here. But I wasn't about to back down. Come on, she said, leading me to the elevator. You're about to meet my board of directors. I nearly choked. What? The doors dinged open, revealing a conference room filled with power. Men and women in tailored suits sat around a polished table, sipping coffee worth more than my entire rent. They all turned as Olivia walked in, her heels clicking against the floor. Good afternoon, she said coolly, taking her seat at the head of the table. I stood awkwardly at the entrance, feeling like an insect under a magnifying glass. And who is this? One of the board members asked, his tone dripping with skepticism. Olivia leaned back in her chair, studying me.
Testing me.
This, she said, is a man who had everything to lose today and still chose to help someone in need. A murmur ran through the room. I forced myself to stand taller. I wasn't going to let their judgment shake me. One of the men smirked. So, you want a job here? I met his gaze head-on. I don't want a job, I said. I want a chance. And I'm willing to prove I deserve it. For the first time, Olivia smiled. The meeting was brutal. They grilled me on business strategies, problem-solving, leadership. Things I had no formal education in. But I knew struggle. Tell us. One of them sneered. What qualifies you to work here? I locked eyes with him. Because I know what it means to start at the bottom. And I know how to fight for something I want. A few eyebrows lifted. Olivia's eyes gleamed with something like approval. One of the older board members leaned forward. All right, he said. Let's see what you can do. We have a problem. Fix it. He slid a file across the table. I had one shot. I flipped open the folder, my heart hammering. Inside was a financial report filled with numbers that made my head spin. This department is failing, the board member said. Find the mistake. I swallowed. I wasn't a businessman, but I was a survivor. I stared at the numbers, forcing my brain to focus. Then I saw it, a pattern, a repeated cost that didn't add up. Here, I said, pointing. This expense is being duplicated. Someone's either bad at accounting or stealing from the company. A beat of silence. Then Olivia turned to her assistant. Check that. The assistant typed into her tablet. A few seconds later, her eyes widened. He's right, she whispered. The boardroom erupted into murmurs. I exhaled slowly. I had just proven myself. And Olivia knew it. After the meeting, Olivia led me to a quiet office. You did good, she said simply. I exhaled, finally allowing myself to breathe. So, what happens now? She slid a contract across the table. Welcome to Monroe Enterprises. I stared at it. A real job. A real chance. But I also knew this was just the beginning. Because the higher you climb, the more enemies you make. And I had just stepped into a world that wouldn't accept me so easily. I had barely started my first day when I felt it, the tension. Not everyone liked the fact that Olivia had personally brought me in. There were whispers, glares, people who wanted me gone. Watch your back, Olivia told me. Not everyone in this company plays fair. I soon learned just how true that was. Because someone was already plotting to destroy me. The moment I stepped into my new office, I felt it. A shift in the air. It wasn't welcoming. People glanced up from their desks, whispered behind their hands. Some barely hid their smirks. Others watched me with thinly veiled hostility. I wasn't supposed to be here. Not someone like me. Olivia had handed me an opportunity, but not everyone was happy about it. I could feel it, the weight of resentment pressing in from all sides. And I knew, without a doubt, that someone was already planning to make sure I failed. Keep your head down, a voice murmured behind me. I turned to see Marcus, one of Olivia's senior managers. He looked concerned. You got talent, kid, but talent doesn't mean much in a place like this, he said. What are you talking about? I asked, narrowing my eyes. Marcus exhaled, glancing around before lowering his voice. There are people here who've spent years trying to climb the ranks, only to watch Olivia walk you in on day one, he said. They don't like that. So what? They're just gonna make my life hell. Marcus met my gaze. Worse. They're gonna make sure you don't last a week.
And he was right.
Because the very next morning, everything went to hell. I arrived early, eager to prove myself. But the moment I stepped into the office, a thick silence settled over the room. Everyone was staring at me, and Olivia was standing in the center, holding a file. Her expression unreadable. Close the door, she said. My stomach tightened. Something was wrong. I closed the door, and she placed the file on the desk between us. Do you have anything to say for yourself? She asked. I frowned, flipping it open, only for my blood to run cold. Inside were emails, messages sent from my company account. Emails that made it look like I had leaked confidential financial information. But the problem was, I never sent them. Someone had set me up. And Olivia was waiting for an answer. This isn't me, I said firmly, pushing the file back. Someone faked this. Olivia studied me, her piercing green eyes searching for any sign of a lie. If I find out you're lying, you're done, she said. I didn't waver. Then investigate it. Silence stretched between us. Then, without a word, she picked up the phone and called IT security. Find out who accessed his account, she ordered. And just like that, the game changed. It took 3 hours for the IT team to trace the login activity. I sat in tense silence, knowing that my entire future hung in the balance. Then Olivia's assistant walked in, holding a printed report. She handed it to Olivia. I watched as Olivia's expression hardened.
She turned to me.
It wasn't you. Relief flooded my chest, but it was short-lived. Because Olivia looked past me, her gaze settling on someone standing just outside the office. Michael, she said coldly. A tall, suited man visibly stiffened. He tried to mask his reaction, but it was too late. Olivia held up the report. You used his login to send those emails. Michael's face drained of color. I was just... Get out, Olivia said, her voice deadly calm. Michael's lips pressed together, but he didn't argue. He knew it was over. I had been framed, and now the real culprit was out in the open. But I wasn't naive. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. That night, as I left the building, my phone buzzed with an unknown number. I hesitated before answering. You got lucky today, a low voice said. But that won't last forever.
Click.
The line went dead. I stood frozen, a cold chill creeping down my spine. I had just made an enemy. And whoever they weren't done with me yet. The next morning, Olivia called me into her office. You handled yourself well, she said. Thanks, I muttered. but I get the feeling this isn't over. She leaned forward, her expression turning serious. It won't be. You need to be prepared. This world? It's not fair. And people like you and me? We don't get second chances. I frowned. People like you? Something flashed in her eyes.
Do your job.
Watch your back. She handed me a folder. This is your next project. Don't fail. She dismissed me, but something about her words stuck with me. Because for the first time, I realized Olivia Monroe wasn't just testing me.
She was warning me.
And I had a feeling she knew exactly how dangerous this game could get. The warning Olivia gave me stuck with me like an itch I couldn't scratch. Something was going on at Monroe Enterprises, something deeper than just office politics. And I was about to find out what. Late that night, long after most employees had gone home, I stayed behind in the office. I had an instinct, a gut feeling that Michael hadn't acted alone. There was a bigger hand at play, someone who wanted me gone before I could even get my footing. I booted up my company computer, scrolling through past financial reports, meeting notes, anything that looked off. And then I found it. A series of payments, hidden beneath fake names and shell companies. Money moving where it shouldn't. A trail of corruption buried in the company's accounts. I stared at the numbers, my pulse quickening. Whoever was behind this, they weren't just sabotaging me. They were stealing from the company. And I had just found proof. Just as I was about to dig deeper, a shadow moved behind me. I barely had time to react before a voice spoke. You really don't know when to quit, do you? I whipped around, my heart hammering. It was Michael. Except this time, he wasn't alone. Two other men in suits stood behind him, their faces cold, unreadable. And then I realized this wasn't about office politics anymore. I had just stumbled into something much bigger. Michael stepped closer, his smile sharp. You should have taken the hit and left when you had the chance, he murmured. I clenched my fists, my instincts screaming at me to get out. You're stealing from the company, I said, my voice steady. Olivia's going to find out. Michael chuckled, shaking his head. Who do you think I work for? His words sent a chill down my spine. He wasn't the mastermind. Someone above him was pulling the strings. And I had just painted a target on my back. Michael moved, fast. His goons stepped forward, their intent clear. I barely dodged as one of them lunged for me, his hand grabbing at my shirt. I bolted. I raced through the empty office, my breath ragged, dodging desks and chairs. Behind me, I heard them following, their footsteps heavy against the floor. If they caught me, I wouldn't be leaving in one piece. I needed to get to Olivia. She had to know. I burst into the stairwell, taking the steps 3 at a time. I reached the lobby just as I heard them slam open the door behind me. And then, a black car screeched to a halt outside. The passenger door flew open. Get in. Olivia's voice rang out. I didn't hesitate. I dove inside and the car peeled away. I sat in the back seat, trying to catch my breath. How did you? I started, but Olivia cut me off. I had a feeling you'd get yourself into trouble, she said, eyes sharp, hands gripping the wheel. I glanced at her. Michael, he's not working alone. I know, she said simply. That, through me. You knew? She sighed, her jaw tight. This company isn't just a business. It's a battlefield. And the person pulling Michael's strings. She shook her head. They've been after me for a long time. I stared at her, realization dawning. Who? I asked. Her lips pressed into a thin line before she finally answered. My own board of directors. The weight of her words hit me like a punch to the gut. Wait, you're saying your own board is trying to take you down? She nodded, her grip tightening on the wheel. They don't want me in control, she admitted. They've been bleeding money from this company for years. I've been slowly cutting off their schemes, but they're smart. Careful. If they can make me look incompetent, or better yet, frame me for something, I'll be forced out. And then they can do whatever they want, I muttered. Exactly, she said. For the first time, I understood. This wasn't just my fight. It was hers too. And whether I liked it or not, I was already in the middle of it. The next morning, Olivia called an emergency board meeting. The sharks were gathered. All of them. Michael was there, looking smug. He thought he had won. But Olivia had other plans. She slid a file across the table. "We traced the missing funds," she said coolly. "And we found where they were going." Michael visibly tensed. The other board members exchanged looks. "Some of you," Olivia continued, "have been making a fortune by stealing from this company." She leaned forward, her voice low, dangerous. "And I have proof." A cold silence filled the room. Michael looked ready to explode. "You can't prove anything," he spat. Olivia smiled. "Actually, we can." She nodded toward me, and I stood up, placing another file on the table. "Your emails," I said. "Your fake transactions. Your mistakes." Michael's face went pale. The boardroom erupted. Michael tried to fight it, but the evidence was airtight. By the end of the meeting, security escorted him out of the building. It should have felt like a victory. But Olivia's warning still echoed in my head. "This isn't over," she murmured. Because Michael was just a pawn. And the person truly pulling the strings? They were still in the shadows. Watching. Waiting. The board was weakened. But not gone. I worked harder than ever, proving my worth, gaining more respect. And then one day it happened. Olivia called me into her office. She looked at me, something unreadable in her eyes. "You've earned something," she said. She slid a document across the desk. I picked it up, then froze. Because it wasn't just a contract. It was a partnership agreement. She was making me her right-hand man, her second in command. The people who had laughed at me, who had tried to ruin me, they had no choice but to respect me now. I had started as nothing.
Now I was at the top.
And when the real enemy finally showed their face, I was ready. Because I wasn't just here to survive anymore. I was here to win.